popcorn, so I'm just
Oh,
going to
the
watch you
popcorn
and
would be
Nate
great.
go at it.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. What is happening, guys? This is Logan Robinson from Hear the Spear, presented to you by Knoll Game Day. Gentlemen, it is game week. We actually have an Irishman here with us this evening, too. It's getting crazy. It is officially game week. It just feels nice to say that. We're back. Football's back. Fans are back in the stands. Woo, we've made it. But to introduce our guest this evening to help us prepare for Florida State versus number 9, Notre Dame, we have Brian Driscoll on with us tonight from Irish Breakdown, from Sports Illustrated also. Brian, good evening. We're welcoming you into all of the Garnet here. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, I'm ready to go. I got my road whites on, brought some of my Irish friends with me, and I actually am Irish, so nice. I am an Irishman, so there you go, ready to rock and roll. And I'm not offended by the mascot, by the way.
Okay, good. Thank you. Appreciate it, too, because, we always get the heat of Osceola and Renegades, so, we get a lot of that
I think
stuff.
he's talking about the Notre Dame mascot, dude.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying, I'm also saying that we also get our heat, too, from our
You can
mascot.
sympathize.
Exactly, but
both are a ridiculous argument for another day.
I know, exactly. Gentlemen, though, first thoughts, though, Florida State, Notre Dame, I mean, we're finally here. It feels like we've been waiting on this for forever. But, man, I mean, the chat is going wild. I've been antsy. I've not been able to sleep at night. Brian, you're coming into town. We hope to meet up with you. But from up there, at Notre Dame, how are they feeling? What's the word on the street over there? Just the feeling of Notre Dame and the team right now.
Well, I think Notre Dame is anxious. I think they're ready to get this team going. There's a lot of confidence at Notre Dame about what this team can be. A lot of athleticism. I've had people that have been at practices from outside, inside, talking about how good they think this team can be and all that. But until you get to see yourself matched up against somebody wearing a different looking uniform, you really don't know just where you've been. It was like that same, I've had years in fall camp where when I was a coach where, I felt good about my team, but you don't really know, like, is it that we're good? Is our defense that bad? Or is it just we're that good? And until you really get a chance to go toe-to-toe and bang helmets with guys that are wearing different jerseys, you really don't know. But there's a lot of confidence about what this team could be. Now, are they going to be like they've been? Or are they going to take the next step? I think that's the big question for Notre Dame right
now. I guess my first question is, Notre Dame's been top 5 in consistency, the last 5 years. They've really stepped up under Brian Kelly, which hurts for me to say because I'm not a big fan of his. But, so you look at the churn on the roster. They're replacing a lot of players. I know they may have confidence coming in, but there's got to be some concern. You're replacing 9 offensive starters, and was it 8 on defense?
No, that's a misleading stat. No,
okay.
they lost 4 starters on the offensive line. Like they listed Brock Wright as a starting tight end last year. He's technically considered a lost starter. Anyone that watched Notre Dame last year knows that Michael Mayer was their starting tight end last year. So they lost 4 starting offensive linemen, a quarterback, and 2 receivers. So, I mean, they lost a lot from the starting lineup. Defensively, they lost 5 starters, I believe, from their defense last season. Now, they were good starters. A lot of those guys in the NFL now, but yeah.
So there's not a concern coming in starting a left tackle, true freshman left tackle.
Sure. The question is, look, I mean, this is what college teams go through, right? I mean, Alabama lost 6 first-round draft picks off their team. No one's thinking they're going to go 8-4 this year. Notre Dame has been here before, and that's the difference between this version of the Notre Dame football program compared to what it was from 2010 to 2016. You just never knew what you were going to get from one year to the next. You go 12-1 in 2012, which is sandwiched between an 8-5 and a 9-4 team. You go to the Fiesta Bowl, you go 10-3, your 3 losses in 2015 are to top 5 teams. 2 of them came down to the wire. You lose to Clemson and a chance to tie it at the end. You lose to Stanford, who was a top 5 team that year. They kick a field goal as time expires. And then the next year you come out and go 4-8, right? That was just that roller coaster ride that we were on, covered Notre Dame from that period of time. And then you look at the last 4 years and you say, well, they go 10-3 in 2017. Looks like the program's finally turning it around a little bit. You lose Quentin Nelson, you lose Mike McGlinchey, you lose Josh Adams. I mean, you lose Alizé. I mean, you lose a lot of different starters. Alizé McDermott Smythe. They had plenty of personnel loss from that 2017 team, How are you going to replace Quentin Nelson? How are you going to replace Mike McGlinchey, 2 top 10 picks? Well, the next year they go undefeated in the regular season. We've been here before. Notre Dame lost 2 drafted defensive ends in 2018, 2019, 2020 defensive line was every bit as good, even more disruptive than the 2019 line. And that's what good programs are supposed to be, right? Like that's what Florida State went through for. I mean, how do you finish in the top 5 for how many over a decade? You're going to lose players all the time. It's just your program is healthy enough. You've recruited well enough. You've developed well enough to where you kind of reload instead of rebuilding. And that's where Notre Dame thinks that they are. And we're going to find out if that's true as we get through these next 13 weeks.
I just think maybe they were maxed out last year. But that's
maxed out how? And could you just explain what you mean by that?
So I felt last year they had a lot of – I think they were an older team last year. Mm-hmm. Okay. I think that experience-wise, it's probably Brian Kelly's best team. I just have a hard time believing that going into a season opening game, whether it's Florida State or whatnot, that's we'll talk about that here in a little bit. I have a hard time going into an away game in an atmosphere that's going to be electric with a quarterback that's brand new. They have 4 new offensive linemen. They have all new wide receivers. They return a great linebacker in Drew White and maybe the country's best defender other than Kayvon Thibodeau and Kyle Hamilton. But you have a new defensive coordinator and a new scheme. I understand having confidence, but I don't know, man. Going into the season, I think last year was their best shot to make it the entire way, in my opinion. And, they recruited well and they developed well. And I think this is going to be a test on just how well Brian Kelly and his staff can continue to develop. Because I think that, we kind of joked around a little bit, on about how easy their schedule is. And I think that's going to help them in the long run. I think that this is just a game that helps FSU where it's at on the schedule. I'd be much more concerned if Notre Dame was game 5 or 6 when they have more continuity and the team is gelled more. I think it's an opportunity more for FSU to catch them game 1. So, I think that to bring in 4 new offensive linemen, I think that when I say maxed out, they had the best offensive line in the country last year. Mm-hmm. You can't say that starting 4 new offensive linemen. I'm sorry.
You can't say. Well, I don't think anyone's saying that they're going to be the
2 freshmen, right? And Blake Fisher,
1 freshman,
and what's that? Rocco,
1 freshman. Rocco's not starting.
Rocco Spezno is not going to start. Okay.
No.
So
no, Zeke Carell starting, who started against North Carolina and Alabama last year.
Okay.
So let me address a couple of these things, Nate, because you're bringing up good points, and those are a lot of the things that Notre Dame fans ask kind of heading into the offseason, right? Like, how do you replace these guys and these guys? Well, Notre Dame goes 10-3 in 2017. They lose Mike McGlinchey and lose Quentin Nelson. Can we all agree that none of the guys that Notre Dame lost were as good as Quentin Nelson and Mike McGlinchey, right? The next year they went 12-0. Right. They also lost Alex Bars, who was their best offensive lineman in 2018. He was the next great offensive lineman. He goes down in September that year, and they still went out and went 12-0 that year. When you talk about Jack Cohn, he's new to Notre Dame. He's not new as a starting quarterback. I mean, this is a guy that led Wisconsin to 10 wins, went on the road against Minnesota late in the year, a top 10 Minnesota team, led him to a win in that game. Talking about a guy that, in Jack Cohn, that played in the Big Ten championship game against Ohio State, played in the Rose Bowl. So clearly a guy that has been in these big environments. Now, again, Florida State's a tough environment. Been there, right? I was down there in 2014 for the Notre Dame game in 2014 But the thing about Notre Dame, it was a phenomenal game. I didn't like the ending, but if you're a fan of college football, it's a tremendous game to be at and be a part of. But the thing about Notre Dame is this is not – these environments are things these kids kind of go through on a consistent basis. Last year was a kind of a weird year because nobody got to – Go ahead.
No. Sorry, there's a little lag there. I thought you were done. Go ahead.
No, but so again, you talk about Jack Cohn. He's new to Notre Dame. He's not new to being a starting quarterback and being a starting He played in the Rose Bowl, right, against Oregon. Had lost by a point to Justin Herbert in Oregon that year. So he's not a new quarterback. The other thing I look at too is you focus on the 1 freshman, right, Blake Fisher, which is I think that is a legitimate concern. As I was on the radio the other day, and they'd say, hey, what do you think about Blake Fisher? I think he's going to play like a freshman. He's going to have some moments where he looks like a 6'6", 335-pound future top 10 NFL draft pick. And then there's going to be other plays where he looks like a true freshman, right? I mean, that's what he's going to do. But you look at the players around him. Jarrett Patterson's a 2-year starter, right? He's a guy that people are looking at as an All-American. Kane Madden's a preseason All-American, although I am not someone who buys that hype. I think being an All-American at Marshall is a whole different universe than being an All-American at Notre Dame, right? But he's at least a veteran player that's a 3-year starter. Zeke Carell is the starting left guard. He started 2 games last year against North Carolina and Alabama. And then Josh Lugg, the starting right tackle, has 9 career starts. So it's not like you're throwing a bunch of young guys into the lineup. You're throwing guys into the lineup that have played big-time football. You know, Josh Lugg got 5 starts at the end of the 2019 season when Robert Hainsey, who was picked in the 3rd round by the Bucks recently, went down with a leg injury. They also lost their starting right guard the game before against Michigan. They go out the last stretch of the season down 2 offensive linemen, and they go out and dominate those final 5 opponents. Now, again, it wasn't like murderer's row. It was Boston College, it was Navy, it was Iowa State and Stanford and Duke. But still, when you recruit the way that Notre Dame does, if you're putting juniors and seniors, and in Josh Lugg's case, a 5th-year senior in the lineup, no, you're not going to be as good as you were last year. But not being as good as they were last year means you have the 9th best offensive line in the country instead of the best offensive line. And I think that's the question that Notre Dame has is, what's the drop-off going to be like, right? Is it going to be a drop-off from we had the best line in the country? And I do think Notre Dame had the best line in the country until Jarrett Patterson got hurt. I think once they lost him, that was kind of the glue, and they weren't as good in the final few games, but that's a different argument for a different day. But is the drop-off mean they're going to be the 30th best O-line, the 20th best O-line, the 10th best O-line? The other part about it, when you look at it from a skill set or skill player standpoint, you are returning an All-American caliber running back. You're returning a guy in Chris Tyree that played a lot last year. You know, Kevin Austin and Braden Lindsey are guys that were expected to be part of the rotation last year. Braden Lindsey has plenty of experience. They both had injuries, which kind of cost them. So they were going to be starters last year. So again, the point being, Notre Dame's not throwing a bunch of guys that have never played football before in the lineup, and exception of Blake Fisher. If that were the case, Nate, I'd probably be a little bit more concerned about it. If they were throwing a bunch of guys who just never really played meaningful snaps, things like that.
I was going to mention too. Go ahead, Nate.
I just want to retort. So, you know, maybe I'm a little bit scorned. You know, Florida State is very familiar with former Wisconsin quarterbacks that had a lot of success at Wisconsin. You know, a guy who had 26 wins, led Wisconsin to all these big games, and he was horrible at FSU. So I really question a guy who was a good fit for the Wisconsin offense, what they like to do offensively. But you come to Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's got to push the ball down the field this year, which we can talk a little bit about later. But, you know, to have the best offensive line in the country and still be 34th in offensive explosiveness, still be 73rd in finishing drives, you know, those are 2 advanced metrics that really tell you about a team. And they weren't even in the top 25%. And you talk about finishing drives, they were 73rd. They finished 77% of the drives in the red zone. So I think there's going to be a fall off. You know, I just don't really.
Well, because you're looking at it from what Notre Dame was, right? That's the point. What I'm telling you as someone who follows Notre Dame is what's that?
I'm looking at the carryover from one season to the next.
I understand that, but what I'm trying to tell you, if you let me finish a point real quick, is you're looking at it for what Notre Dame was. What I'm trying to tell you is that the guys that were expected to be the top players for Notre Dame last year got injured in fall camp. They weren't going through last season with their full allotment of playmakers. So you look at Kevin Austin, you look at Braden Lindsey, and you look at Lawrence Keys. Those were expected to be their playmakers last year. Kevin Austin got hurt in July. Tried to come back middle of the season, played a couple games, caught a pass, and then broke his foot again. He was out for the year. Braden Lindsey got hurt. This was a guy that in 2019 averaged 23 yards a catch, 15 yards a carry on 13 carries. Last year, he averaged 9 yards a catch on 7 catches because he was hurt all year, right? So, again, what I'm telling you is, I mean, you can believe it or not, is I'm pretty familiar with this program, and what they were last year was essentially – we have guys going down. Lawrence Keys got sick. He was out with COVID at one point in time, had another illness another point in time. They had a true freshman tight end. They basically said, we have the best line in the country, and we play a weak schedule, and we have a great defense, we're not going to give other teams a chance to beat us by doing these different things that they have done in the past. We're going to pound it. We're going to run the ball, and we're going to get W's. When Notre Dame did have to open it up, they were able to do that, right? You saw what they did early against Clemson. You saw what they did late against Clemson in the regular season game. When they had to stretch the field, they were good at it. I mean, they did it against Florida State last year. I mean, if you go back and watch that game, there were plays where Florida State was literally 9 guys within 4 yards of the line of scrimmage. One of Kyron Williams' long runs, he had to make Janarius Robinson miss in the backfield because there weren't enough guys to block him. Well,
I don't think that's something to be proud about. I think everyone did that.
Well, the point being that Notre Dame was able to stretch the field against them last year. Javon McKinley obviously beat Jarian Jones a couple times. He beat Asante Samuel a couple times. Notre Dame was able to make some of those big plays, and that was after Notre Dame hadn't played football in a month because of COVID. So you can look at Notre Dame for what they were and just assume, well, that's the best they had. But what I'm telling you is they did that because that's what they had to do because of the guys that they had lost throughout the course of the season, which I think is a testament to just how good that line was last year, to your point, Nate, that they were able to carry the team despite all those injuries. There was one point in time where they went 2 weeks in fall camp where they had to convert a linebacker. I'm trying to remember who the other guy was, and a receiver to running back because they only had one running back that wasn't in the COVID protocols. Right now, the good thing about that is the one running back that was still there was Kyron Williams. He turned out to be okay, but he wasn't expected to be the starting running back last year. So again, you can talk about Alex Hornibrook, who like you said won some games at Wisconsin. I think wasn't he their quarterback the year they went 13-1, I believe. But if you look at Jack Cohn's numbers and you compare Jack Cohn's numbers to Hornibrook's numbers, and then you compare his game, you break down the all 22, and you say, you know what, this guy had a 5 percentage point completion between Russell Wilson and Jack Cohn. So from 2011 to 2019, there wasn't a quarterback that played at Wisconsin that was within 5 percentage points of Jack Cohn's 69.6 completion rate. There wasn't a single quarterback during that stretch that had as good of a QB rating as what Jack Cohn did. So you look at and you compare it to what the other quarterbacks did, it wasn't close. Jack Cohn had significantly better numbers. Then you dive into the film and you say, this is a guy that does throw with great anticipation. This guy does have a better arm than what Alex Hornibrook had. This guy does have the ability to throw the ball downfield. And so he fits this offense really well. Is he a future top 10 NFL draft pick? I'm not saying that, but he doesn't need to be. And I think he brings an element to this Notre Dame offense that honestly they lacked with Ian Book, which was the ability to throw the ball downfield. Ian Book was just not a guy that was going to throw the ball downfield. Jack Cohn is a more willing downfield passer when given that opportunity.
I think one thing to note too with what Hornibrook had was Willie Taggart here in town. I'm worth noting that too, what he was dealing with too.
But he also wasn't a super talented quarterback. I mean, we can all agree on that. But yeah,
and I don't think we were expecting that.
Whatever Willie Taggart touched did not turn out.
One thing I want to note, and I've seen a few pieces that you've wrote on, Brian, is someone. Speaking of getting to Cone, there's a guy named Jermaine Johnson. You got Keir Thomas, and I know you've talked a little bit about them on your show along with your articles. And, what is y'all's, expectations for them of protecting the quarterback there? Because, Florida State and Adam Fuller, they're going to want to get after him. It's not just going to be Jermaine they're sending off the side. They're going to send a gainer with number 33. They're going to use Jamie Robinson, which I know you've noted on a lot. But kind of give me your thoughts on what Notre Dame is thinking, getting prepared for this game with that pass rush.
I think they see a more athletic front seven than what they faced last year. I think Jermaine Johnson, who Notre Dame has faced, Notre Dame went against Jermaine Johnson in 2019 when they played at Georgia. He had a really key pressure late in that game, so they're going to be familiar with what he brings to the table. But I think Florida State's defensive line is going to do two things better this year, and I think Notre Dame is aware of that. Number one is they got a little bit more juice on the edge this year than they did last year. All right, I think Jermaine brings that. I think Keir Thomas, I don't see him as a guy that brings necessarily more pass rush juice, but I think what he brings is a much better edge setter against the run than what they had last year. And I think one of the issues that Florida State had on defense last year is their defensive ends, to me, freelanced way too much, weren't great at setting the edge, and got beat a lot. Yep. I talk about the play where Janarius Robinson comes off the edge, and he's got Kyron Williams in his sights, and Kyron just does this little move, and you can't do that if you're going to be a good defense. So I do think, and I've talked about this, I'm sure you guys have heard me when we did our Florida State previews, I think there were some guys that they needed to get rid of, that they needed to move on to create a better culture. That more than anything, that's the thing that Willie Taggart ruined, in my opinion, as an outsider looking in, was you created a culture that you just can't win with. And I think you've got some of these, by bringing in some of these guys, like Jamie Robinson, for example, right? Is he a guy that you want in coverage a whole lot? No, not really. He gave up, I think, 75% completion percentage at South Carolina. But he brings an attitude as a run defender that you just didn't have last year in the secondary. And so I think between him and Thomas and then Jermaine Johnson with athleticism, now your young linebackers, Dix, Deloach, Gaynor, they're all a year older. Those guys are now going to, I think, be more effective. And I think that's going to be the key for Florida State is I think they're better prepared to be at least a quality run defense this year at the minimum. And that's the thing that hurt them because last year everybody could just come out and run on them. And they had to commit so many resources in the box to stopping the run that, of course, you got exposed on the perimeter in the pass game. So I think that, to me, is a key that Notre Dame's going to be prepared for that. I think they see that. They know what these guys can bring to the table. And they know that they're going to have to be able to make some plays on the perimeter, but also still find ways to be able to run the football against what is probably going to be a more physical, at least, and a more discipline. I think this is the biggest thing is the discipline part. We've talked about this in our show a lot. Teams that had brand new coaches last year, it was the worst year to make a coaching change. Now, you didn't know it when you made the change, right? No, we couldn't anticipate that COVID was going to do to the offseason what it did, but it was the worst year to have a coaching change. So no spring ball. Summer workouts are limited. You can only have X number of players in them. I mean, it was not the year you wanted to be installing a new offense and a new defense. And I think that has to be taken into account, which is why I've told Notre Dame fans, I'm glad Notre Dame's playing Florida State in the opener. I feel better about this game than I would if you had to travel to Tallahassee in late October, early November. I actually think this timing of this game is good for Notre Dame because Florida State's all Notre Dame has had to worry about this offseason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just wanted to go back to Blake Fisher really quick because, you just talked about a little bit Florida State's improved pass rush. And obviously him matching up with Jermaine Johnson off the edge, it's going to be a really tough matchup in his first college game, especially, in a rocking atmosphere on Sunday night on the road. So what have you heard about his development so far, and how do you think Notre Dame is going to help him out?
Well, what's interesting is Blake wasn't supposed to be the starting left tackle, obviously. Notre Dame didn't say, hey, let's start a true freshman at left tackle. Jarrett Patterson was originally going to move to left tackle. That was the original plan. He was recruited to play left tackle. The only reason he moved to center was they had this guy named Liam Eichenberg at left tackle and this guy named Robert Hainsey at right tackle who were second and third round picks last year. And it was one of those deals where, like, look, Jarrett's our fifth best lineman in 2019. We have to find a way to get him on the field. And so that's what they did, and he became the starting center. He was actually going to move to left tackle. Well, he got hurt late in the season last year, so he was out in the spring, which opened up an opportunity for Blake Fisher to get more reps as an early enrollee. And within a week, it was, okay, Jarrett's not moving to left tackle. I mean, it was that quick. I've talked to former Notre Dame offensive linemen who saw Blake in the spring, and they said, this is the most talented kid that I've seen at Notre Dame. Now, these are people that played with Quentin Nelson and Mike McGlinchey, right? So you can take that as hyperbole or just, saying, hey, this kid's got a ton of potential. But at the same time, I don't care how talented you are, you're still a freshman. There's still things that you can't learn until you play. It's the whole, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's going to be the thing we have to find out. It's one thing to have to defend Isaiah Foskey and Myron Tungvalo in practice. When if you mess up, you blow the whistle, you line up, you do it again. And it's another thing to do it against Jermaine Thomas and Johnson and these kind of guys in a game where, there are no redos. There are no, I didn't properly pass set and get in my depth, so let's do it again. Those are the things we don't know. And that's always the case with a freshman. Until you see him do it when the bullets are live and, the lights are bright and there's 80,000 people in the stands and it's nationally televised, the only game in town and all that, you really never know how a guy's going to handle that. But Blake is an incredibly talented player. He's going to look like a freshman at times. And to your point of how Notre Dame can help him, I think it depends on how the game unfolds. If he's having assignment mistakes, then I think there's things you can do. You can slide your protection to him more. You can chip with a tight end. You can just go tight end over there. Notre Dame has a lot of those guys. They have a lot of tight ends they can help with. I think some things to move the pocket. If Jermaine's just really screaming off the edge, throw some screens behind him, boot around him, run away from him, just do some different things to kind of get his eye discipline off a little bit. So there's plenty they can do. I think they're going to at least give Blake a chance early to see, hey, let's see how the kid holds up. But you all look, when you have a freshman left tackle, you've always got a game plan in your back pocket of, okay, if he's struggling with Jermaine Johnson, here's what we go to. Every good offensive coordinator is going to do that. And I would imagine Tommy Rees will do the same thing.
We've talked a lot about Notre Dame's offense. I want to talk about the defense a little bit. Obviously, you have Kyle Hamilton, like Nate mentioned earlier, probably the top 3 defensive player in the country. Great linebacker in Drew White. How are they preparing for Florida State's quarterbacks? Because while it's not been announced to starter, if it's Jordan Travis, who had a pretty solid game last year, especially on the ground, or if it's Mackenzie Milton, how are they preparing for that, and how do they feel going against those quarterbacks?
I think they realize that both of them are pretty good players, but the other thing is they both play the game a lot differently. Whereas Jordan is a runner that can throw it. He's got to improve as a passer, but he can throw the ball over the top. You point to that you could point to that North Carolina game and say, that 8 for 19 wasn't overly impressive, but the 191 yards on 8 completions was pretty impressive. And there's always that threat of a guy that can run around and you kind of come down and you're trying to get into the box to protect him on the second level, and he just pulls up, throws it over your head. I think that's the fear that Notre Dame has. And, of course, Mackenzie Milton can run, although we don't know how well he's going to run after the injury, but he's more of a guy that's going to hurt you with his arm. So I think when you're Notre Dame, you prepare for both. They've said they're prepared for both, and then you're gonna alter your calls depending on who the quarterback is. I think the player that Notre Dame least wants to face on a consistent basis is Jordan Travis, and I think the reason for that is we saw this last year. When you have a quarterback that can make plays when things break down, who can make plays when things have to go off script, that's where you can kind of neutralize a team that maybe has a talent advantage. And I absolutely think Notre Dame does. Notre Dame has a talent advantage. They have an experience advantage over Florida State's offense. Well, how do you take advantage of that? Well, you have a guy that, your end may beat my guy off the edge. Robert Scott may get beat by Isaiah Foskey, but you've got a quarterback that can make that guy miss, do something with it, and that's when you can extend drives. And that's why what Jordan Travis did last year to Notre Dame. The difference between now and then, however, is there's a lot more film on Jordan Travis than there was when Notre Dame faced him last year. I mean, all they really had was the Jacksonville State game. But guys like that are always dangerous, in my opinion. And if he can improve as a passer at all, that's how this offense could get really dangerous. He's just got to become a guy that can just make some of those. He's got to be able to make some of those layups. He's got to be able to make some of those easy reads and those easy throws. He doesn't have to look like Trevor Lawrence to be an effective quarterback. He just has to be able to make some of those efficient throws that then accents his ability to run and make plays down the field.
How do you think, going into this game too, both offensively and defensively, the physical factor, Florida State has been seen before where they've kind of given up kind of on games here and there. And last year was a little bit better and we saw that, and that was nice to see. But how do you think going against a Florida State team this year that has a full spring, a full fall camp, do you think this will, it definitely will have some upside, I think, for Florida State that we can count on. But how much, is Notre Dame looking into that, seeing that this team had a full, off season to work with, and they're expecting to have a different kind of product they'll be facing?
Number one, I think two things work in Notre Dame's advantage when it comes to not overlooking Florida State. Number one is you faced them last year, right? You saw what happens when you make mistakes, when you fumble the ball on offense, when you fumble the ball on punt return, when you don't have gap discipline, when you've got a mobile quarterback. You saw what can happen, right? This is basically a one-score game in the second half. That's going to keep Notre Dame from not overlooking Florida State, as opposed to, let's say, it was like the 2018 game when Florida State basically quit and Notre Dame dominated them with their backup quarterback. So I think they're not going to overlook at that regards. But the other thing too is, guys, this is still Florida State, right? I mean, this isn't like South Florida or something like that. This is still Florida State. These kids remember when Florida State won a title. It's not like they haven't won a title since Charlie Ward was here, right? They won a title when these kids were teenagers. So they're going to be up for it because it's Florida State. So I think those two things kind of factor in, that Notre Dame knows, hey, look, we're going down there. This is Florida State. These are guys you played against in high school. These are highly ranked kids. You know who they are. We got to be ready for it. And that's, again, why I say I'm glad this is the opener, not down the road to where, you play a team on Saturday and then you really don't turn the page on Florida State till Sunday, Monday. Well, Notre Dame's had the page right on Florida State for a while now. And I think that's something that's certainly going to benefit them. They're not going to overlook Florida State. That doesn't mean that Florida State's going to lose or win. I'm just saying that Notre Dame, they're going to have to earn this win, because Notre Dame is certainly going to be prepared for them. They're not going to they're not. And who are they looking past, right? Oh boy, you got to get ready for that big Toledo game next week. You know what I mean? Like this is their early season test, right? They don't play another team like this until Wisconsin at the end of September. This is the game that Notre Dame has had circled on the calendar for quite a while.
I do appreciate that, they had the old logo on the leg press machine. You know.
Oh
You know.
yeah. And they had Jamie Robinson on there too on the leg press machine too. And Jamie commented back on his Instagram story saying it's not that deep, and then he said, "See you on September 5th."
Yeah. So you talk about the playmakers. You talked about coming off injuries and all that kind of stuff. And you talk about Florida State's defense last year, and they're just flat out horrible. So talk to us a little bit more about what Notre Dame expects from wide receiver, because I think that's an interesting position. Brian Kelly's done pretty well there. And from my side as an FSU fan, who I follow recruiting heavily, and a lot of these guys we're blue chip, but just haven't done it yet. So I'm interested to see how they do it, and what does Notre Dame expect from these guys.
Well, I think the biggest thing is they need them to be healthy. Mm-hmm. That's been the problem. I mean, we've seen Kevin Austin in practice just dominate. I mean, the Notre Dame corners that are now in the NFL, it's just been suspended in 2019, injured in 2020. He's caught one pass the last 2 years. The talent's there. It's like, hey, it's time to turn that talent into potential, right? Recruiting rankings, Kevin Austin being a top 100 recruit doesn't make you a great player. You've got to go create. When you look at Braden Lindsey, as I said, when Braden Lindsey has been healthy, he's been really good. Go watch the USC game in 2019 when that was still a good game, and he takes a reverse and outruns the entire defense for over 50 yards for a touchdown. He had a 72-yard touchdown reception against Navy. He had a 52-yard reception against New Mexico. He had a 60-yard jet sweep for a touchdown, 61-yard jet sweep against Boston College. This is a guy that's got home run speed. It's just, can you stay healthy or not? Mm-hmm. That's the thing, is like when these guys have been on the field, Lawrence Keys in 2019, early in the year, Notre Dame had Michael Young was out, Braden Lindsey was out, Kevin Austin was out. Lawrence Keys steps up. He's got to start against Georgia, makes a huge one-on-one play to set up a score. So these aren't guys that haven't been in the moment before. When they've had their chances and been healthy, they're guys that have played. The key now, Nate, as far as the expectation is, they got to stay healthy and they've got to be able to play consistent football. The reason I'm not as concerned about it is, as long as they're healthy, they'll be fine, because receivers one of those positions where I don't really care what your experience level is. A quarterback, experience matters. Offensive line, I think experience matters. Receiver, it's not. I mean, you just go look at Notre Dame in the past. Will Fuller has 6 catches as a freshman. The next year he goes out and catches 76 passes. Golden Tate catches 6 passes as a freshman. Next year he goes out and has over 1,000 yards on 58 catches. Miles Boykin in his first 3 years at Notre Dame catches 18 balls in 3 years combined. Like a third of those came in the LSU game at the end of the 2017 season, and the only reason he played then is because they had like 3 receivers that were hurt, and then he comes out the next year, balls out, and he becomes a 3rd-round pick in 1 year. I think receiver's a position where if you have the skill, you can play. It's not a position that requires the advanced technique that playing left tackle does, or playing center does, things like that, or playing quarterback does, where you've got to know what everybody's doing. You have to have that veteran experience. If you have the talent, you have the talent to play a receiver. And that's why I'm a little higher on Florida State's receiving core this year, is because, they're young. They haven't proven a lot. Those backups, McClain and Burrell, guys like that. But I don't think you need a ton of experience to be at least a good receiver in college. The thing for Notre Dame is just keep them healthy. If they can stay healthy, they'll be fine. I mean, Notre Dame's got a couple top 100 recruits at receiver that are barely not going to sniff the field the early part of the season, and Lorenzo Styles and Deion Colsey, because that's how loaded the guys ahead of them are. And the other part of it too is you have to look at tight end too when you're going to talk about the Notre Dame pass game. You kept talking about what they lost a receiver. Well, they've got arguably the best tight end in the country. And if you don't believe me, if you think I'm just a Notre Dame homer, this is what Kirk Herbstreit said. There's other people who have said the same thing. This is the most talented receiver in college football. A guy caught 42 passes last year, which is a Notre Dame freshman record. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but Notre Dame's called tight end U for a reason, and it goes back for decades. When you set freshman records at Notre Dame at tight end, that's saying something. So you have to factor that in as well.
For me as an FSU fan, I'm more worried about him than I am the wide receivers.
What if you're watching based on what we saw last year? Absolutely. Because here's the thing too about that, Nate, is if you have to defend a tight end and the run game, that means you've got to condense the field. which then exposes you to some things on the outside, and that's what Michael Mayer can do. If he's really ripping you up the seams, if he's taking advantage of, because what was the, in your opinion, what was the biggest problem for Florida State last year in the pass defense? For me, it was the linebackers.
Absolutely.
For me.
Yeah, it was that, and just not getting to the quarterback.
Right. I'm like, as far I said pass defense. I meant to say coverage is what I meant to say. I apologize.
Linebackers, and that's even the same this year.
Right.
So
and they got to cover Michael Mayer.
Fan,
right?
who's they've traditionally not done well against athletic guys that that play tight end, and they can just create mismatches, stretch the field, and they can dominate from that spot.
Right.
That's a concern for me. But while I'm thinking about it, just to change the subject real quick, one guy I was super high on a lot more than the recruiting services was Philip Reilly. He's a guy I've seen play a couple times, and it's a guy I wanted Florida State to land. I got to ask how he's been doing, because he's a guy who I'm super high on. In terms
Notre Dame
of,
staff is very high on him as well. Yes.
He is a cover corner. He may not be a supreme athlete, but he's athletic enough, and he's just he has the nuances of the game. He's well coached already. He's a guy who I'm excited to watch. So you think that's someone that's going to play this year?
Not this weekend.
Oh yeah,
I think at some point in time he's going to play. Right now, Phillip is behind. He's probably a third team guy, but Notre Dame's very high on him. Very high on him. They got a lot of corners coming back. I mean, you look at Phillip. I still think there's a chance his future could be at safety, and not because he can't play corner, but in Marcus Freeman's defense, the safeties have to cover. If you look at how Notre Dame has recruited this year, I mean, Notre Dame they signed 4 corners last year, including Philip Reilly. They've got 4 corners signed again in the 2022 class. They got obviously Devin Moore from Naples. They've got Benjamin Morrison from Arizona. They got Jaden Bellamy from New Jersey. And then they got Jaden Mickey, who's out in Centennial High School out in L.A. Well, why are you signing 4 corners the year after you signed 4 corners last year? Because Notre Dame wants cover guys. They want long cover guys. Right. And if you're a corner who's, instead of taking this old adage that fans have, well, if he can't play corner, you can move him to safety. Well, if he can't play corner, he's not going to be a great safety either, right? They want guys that can cover, and they'd like to have a defense that can do that. And I think the unique thing about Phillip is, no, he's not an elite athlete, but he's a good athlete. And putting him in the nickel or putting him in a safety position, then to me, accents his athleticism, but he's so physical. I mean, you saw him last year, I'm sure. He's one of the strongest corners I've seen in a long time. And he's a really smart player. And I think you getting him in matchups where he's going against tight ends and backs only adds to the value he can bring. So that's ultimately where I see him playing, but he's still sticking at corner and playing pretty well. So is Ryan Barnes, who's a freshman from Maryland, but they're just buried behind guys who Notre Dame thinks has a chance to be an outstanding secondary this year.
No, and we lost Nate. There it goes. It happens at least once.
Sure, it was going to be a great riveting question. I was looking forward to it.
It was at least once or twice in every show that we lose Nate. But I had a really good one that I wanted to ask you, Brian. So what is one thing that Florida State can take advantage of against Notre Dame? I asked this on the Mark Rogers show, but for our listeners here, what is one thing that Florida State can take advantage of against the Notre Dame Irish?
I think there's one thing on both sides of the ball. I think when you look at the Notre Dame offense, what I would do is Notre Dame does not have an inexperienced offensive line. I pointed that out. Josh Lugg has 9 career starts. Zeke Carell started in the Rose Bowl. Kane Madden's played 2 years. Jarrett Patterson is a 2-year starter. But they don't have any experience playing together. And that takes time. I don't care how many starts they have. It takes time for 5 guys who've never played together at the positions they're at to go out there and gel. If I'm Florida State, I'm not lining up trying to play big boy football with Notre Dame. I'm not. That doesn't mean you can't, but why? I want to get them turning. I want to get their guards thinking, okay, I'm doing this. This guy's coming across my face. Oh, there goes a linebacker on the other side. I'm stunning. I'm slanting. I'm attacking the gaps. I'm trying as best I can to get those big Notre Dame linemen to turn their hips, because once an offensive lineman has to turn his hips, he's lost his power. He's lost his force. And I think that's what they got to do. And then picking those things up, guys, requires communication. Hey, look, me and you, we're working together here. When I see that guy crossing my face, I'm yelling out the words to you, whatever the taglines are, to say, hey, this guy's coming across, right? That communication takes time. It takes experience, and doing it on practice is a whole lot different than doing it with 80,000 people in the stands. Or what is it, like 79 now in Doak, whatever?
Yeah,
so it's a lot, right? It's more than what's at practice, okay? And you can play the chant all you want. It's not the same as 79, 80,000 screaming people. So I'm going to make that line communicate every snap. I'm going to make them have to turn and work on those adjustments and say, hey, if you're going to beat us, you're going to have to pick up all those things, because we're going to try to make, because what can you do to stop Notre Dame, right? You create early down negatives, tackles for loss, incompletions, sacks, get Notre Dame in those third and long situations where now what's coming. I think that's what they need to do on defense. Offensively, for me, it's just keep the game close. And this is what we talked about on our show is, if Florida State can stay balanced, this is game one for Notre Dame, just like it is for Florida State. There's going to be game one mistakes. There's going to be game one mistakes, meaning I got B gap. Oops, I went to A gap. And now Jashawn Corbin or, Lawrence can kind of bust through that hole. And next thing you know, that mistake turns into a 40-yard gain. If Florida State can keep this game competitive and make it a 7 to 10 point game, then you can stay balanced. That's where those big plays can open up. What Notre Dame wants to do is jump on Florida State early and get them out of that balance. Because if this becomes a game where Florida State's got to throw the ball all day to beat Notre Dame, they're going to beat Notre Dame. And it probably won't be close. If they can stay balanced, then they have a chance to me, rip off those big plays that they're going to need. They're going to need turnovers, and they're going to need big plays on offense to keep it close. And again, you look at Florida State last year. This is also something we talked about on our show. This is an offense that ran for 199.9 yards per game last year, despite ranking in the 100s in tackles for loss allowed and sacks allowed, right? To average that, to be the number, I think, 23rd best team in the country in yards per attempt, despite the fact you were one of the worst teams in the country and giving up negatives, says a lot about what this offense can be when they're eliminating the negatives on their side. And so I think that's the thing that you have to try to do is you got to be able to keep hammering that nail, because eventually someone's going to make a mistake, and that mistake can turn into a big play. But if you're down 20 and you can keep running it all you want because you're not enough game, there's not enough time on the clock for you to come back from 20, just keep running the football. And so I think that's the thing that Florida State needs to do is keep hammering that nail, and eventually someone's going to make a mistake, and that's when you can rip off a big play.
Well, Brian, before we keep you on here for too long, because we've got so many more things. I mean, Jameis Winston's named the starter in New Orleans. I mean, that should be the biggest thing we talk about this week, right?
That should really headline the episode.
I know that should be the headline before anything, honestly. But Brian,
he beat out Taysom Hill and Ian Book. Woohoo!
Whoa! The chat's going to start coming after you. I'm going to have to come after you.
That's a former Notre Dame quarterback.
Yeah. You haven't listened to my channel the last 3 years about Ian Book, have you? No, you haven't. That's not an impressive feat, guys. I'm sorry.
Oh man. Anyways,
I'm just trying to ruffle your feathers.
It's nice. It's game week. It's time to talk trash. This is what college football is all about. So if nobody likes it, then go cry and watch tennis. Anyways, Brian, score prediction time. What are you thinking? You'll be down here. Hope to see you in Tallahassee. Everybody will treat y'all well. It should be a phenomenal experience. The weather looks great. What is your score prediction for Florida State versus number 9 at Notre Dame coming into town? Prime time.
I don't have a score yet, and we'll do that tomorrow on our score prediction show. But to me, I look at it. This is a game for Notre Dame that I think if they can jump out on Florida State early, it won't be a close game. If this game is competitive going in the second half, it's going to be a battle. But I just don't see a scenario in which, unless Notre Dame turns it over a bunch, that they can win this game. I think Florida State's ascending. We talked about this in the last time, Logan, you and I were on a show together. This is a program on its way up, but Mike Norvell didn't inherit what Brian Kelly inherited. There's no Manti Te'o. There's no Tyler Eifert. There's no Zach Martin. There's no Harrison Smith that he inherited. He's got to build this thing basically from scratch. The time will come, but it's not going to be on September 5th.
Well, Brian,
real quick.
Nate's not done.
I'm not done. First, I want to say congratulations to Sports Illustrated for getting the ranking of Travis Hunter correct. It's great to see, that kid continue to earn, what is rightfully his. And also, just safe travels. It's crazy out there, with COVID and everything. Safe travels.
Appreciate that.
Plan to meet up with you. We'll talk and we'll talk some
Wrestle
smack in
each
person. We'll talk some smack in person.
It'll be better with beers in our hands anyway.
It's always fun, especially for me who, I have, Brian Kelly at number 4 on my most hated coaches of all time on my list. So,
Do you mind if I ask why?
I just think, I just think he's just a pompous douche. I don't understand. He's had success, at Notre Dame. And I think as a Notre Dame fan, you guys are ready to win a title, right? Just as like Florida State fans are ready to get back to that Jimbo Fisher run of when he was, on top of it. I just think he acts like his stuff doesn't stink, and I just don't like him. I would say there's a very big difference between Urban Meyer and Dabo Swinney, who are number 1 and 2. And I think that I think the gap is very large.
I think I know why those guys are number 1 and 2 on your list.
But Dabo's past Steve Spurrier now. Just this offseason, I just can't stand Dabo. But so it'll be fun to talk some smack about Brian Kelly and just shoot the crap and talk about why I think Notre Dame is coming into this game a little too high and needs to be ready for a possible upset.
Can I ask one favor? If you're going to troll Notre Dame, can you at least get the name right of the school that you're trying to troll them about?
Who?
Is that too much to ask?
Notre Dame?
No, I'm not talking about you, Nate. I'm talking about the chat.
The chat. Oh, we got a in here.
Yeah. Can you at least get the name right?
I'm trying to find which one in the chat had on there.
I got to see it.
Is it Eric? No, Eric's good. It must have been up a little bit more.
Yeah, it was M. Roar.
Oh, man.
Bishop Sycamore is the name of the fake school, not Sycamore Bishop. If you're gonna come with a troll attempt, at least get the name right. Is that too much to ask?
Yeah, Roar's comment on here says Teo's girlfriend was a lead varsity cheerleader at Sycamore Bishop. Okay, that's pretty funny though. What is that?
At least get the name right. I don't know. He was with the Bears last year. I'm not sure what he's doing now.
How's his girlfriend?
No
doing?
idea.
Any signs of her up there? And
have you seen Manti Te'o's actual girlfriend?
I haven't seen Manti Te'o play a snap yet. Yeah. Really, I'll be honest. I'm still waiting. Anyways, a little trash talk.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have something. I mean, when Notre Dame's blown you out the last 2 times you've played it, you got to come with something, right? I mean,
so that was Brian on our show. We definitely appreciate him coming on to the show. But no, Brian, for real, thank you for coming on here. We look forward to having you. Safe travels when you come down to Tallahassee. It should be a phenomenal time. Hopefully, a good game going in the fourth quarter for all of us here. That's all we want, and all the college football world watching on Sunday night. It will be the only game, but Brian, definitely appreciate you. Where can they find you? Socials, anything, do your shout out.
Irish Breakdown, obviously, is irishbreakdown.com. Also, you can find our site. Irish Breakdown is the name of our YouTube channel, and you can find me on social media at Coach D, as in Driscoll, my name right there, at Coach D178. So you can find it there. And, like I said, if you're going to try and troll, at least get the name right. That's all I ask. Don't be like Michigan fans and be bad at trolling, okay? Don't be that. Aspire to be better than Michigan fans.
Yeah, make sure you get the Hobbit and eat some of their boneless wings.
Where's this?
Boneless.
You always got to give me good food, Rex. I'm going to be in town early on Saturday. I'm getting in Friday night, so you got to at least give me one good food rec.
Hobbit American Bar and Grill. Look it up. There'll be one right by Doak. There's 2 locations.
And
I got my notepad. I'm writing it down right now.
Mainly Hobbit, always delicious. Okay. If you want wings, some good beer, some good fries, everything. They got burgers too, but they're also a sponsor of our show here, so got to give them love. But I go there every Thursday and Sunday night for wings.
Yeah, what do you like? I guess
wings. I mean, wings, burgers. I mean, I don't drink beer, so I'm more of a food guy than a beverage guy. Yeah.
Got everything for you, everything in the world.
Perfect.
You got to get a gut box, and you got to go to, I don't know if they have water.
I just want to get some nice food to take back to the hotel to sit down and watch the Clemson Georgia game and watch a little LSU UCLA. It's going to be a great. That's why I'm flying in on Friday night, because I didn't want to be traveling on Saturday with all the great games we're going to see.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Brian, appreciate you, man. Have a good evening. Safe travels when you come down here, and maybe we'll do a little recap with you, too. That would be
Sounds
great.
good. Thanks for having me on,
Absolutely,
guys.
man. Appreciate
Thanks,
you.
Brian.
Take care.
Well, that was good stuff there. We got a little trash talk. It feels good. We're actually in football season. That's all I needed right there. We're actually in football season. Nate, you got to go at it with one of our first guests of the season.
I'm sorry.
We're in mid-season form, and it feels good.
Real quick. Yeah, I just find it hard to believe that.
We didn't really go at it, but
I just find it hard to believe that a team that loses as much would be as confident going into a season opening game. That's just me. That's just me.
I can understand.
I was surprised to say Cone's better than Ian Book. That's what I was like.
There's a lot of what ifs and situationals there about if this person can stay healthy and this person can do that. And you look at Jack Cone. He averaged 8 yards per completion at Wisconsin, averaged 194 yards passing. He didn't like the rolled up. He had Jonathan Taylor as his running back, right? If I'm not mistaken. So I'll have to really look back.
He had a good running back.
So I mean, let's simmer down a little bit on the expectations.
We'll see. I think it'll be a great matchup. I was glad to have.
I did too. I did.
Rundown.
Yeah, it's good to have a guy who's like
knowledgeable. You don't really get that much anymore.
No, he knew his stuff for sure.
It's good for it's something we should do throughout the season is have these guys on that can really preview the team and give us a window into what's been going on in the camp and in the fall season, because that's what really tells you. You can read all these preseason mags that come out in June, like Athlon Sports has Dylan Gibbons as a backup for Notre Dame, so it's really like the here and now that's good to kind of get a real shot of what's going on. So
absolutely. Before we jump into quick hitters of the week, gentlemen, let's go ahead and talk about Proud 90. Best polos. I'll be wearing them actually this weekend when I go into College Town. I wore it at work. I've never had so many people talk about it. They feel great. They're awesome. They look good. They're great for tournament wears. If you're just going out there to shoot the stuff with some of your friends, they feel amazing. I love wearing them. I've already worn both of mine too many times now. I need to wash them. Actually, that's something I need to do. But they're stretchy. They're extremely light too, and I think a lot of fans here, Florida State fans, it's actually ran and operated by two former Noles too. So make sure you guys go show them some love. Proud90.com. I'll put the little banner up here for you guys. We also have a code for you guys to use, NGD20. That's NGD20 for 20% off at proud90.com. Phenomenal. They feel amazing, and they're awesome with us. We definitely appreciate their support, and go show them some love. Awesome polos. So like I said,
I got to piggyback off of you real quick. Like I wore mine out, and it's hot as hell down here in Florida, and I say pretty cool. Like, you wear some dry fit polos, you still feel kind of hot and uncomfortable. They say pretty cool. So
yeah,
I definitely.
No. They feel amazing. So definitely go show some love to those guys. Help us, also help them, and then they're definitely ready for the game this upcoming weekend. So proud90.com, use code NG20. Gentlemen, let's get into some quick hitters before we end off the show with our little game preview and score predictions. So number one, let's get it off. Here we go. Jameis Winston has officially been named the starter in New Orleans. Much deserved. We talked about it and covered his competition through it all down there in New Orleans. But man, oh man, he is now the named starter. He had a phenomenal game, his last one, where he started the game, had 2 touchdowns, threw some bombs too. I mean, he looked like he was in control of the game as the general. And, we talked about it on here. That wasn't going to be a competition, in my opinion, with Taysom Hill. But, that's just how it goes. Sean Payton, time to unblock me. You've blocked me. You blocked me last year when I tweeted you 86 times. Yes, I counted. I tweeted him 86 times to start Jameis Winston. He liked one of my tweets, and then he blocked me the next 5 minutes later. Sean Payton unblocked me. But gentlemen, Jameis starting in New Orleans, and he'll be starting against. He'll be playing against Aaron Rodgers in Jacksonville. Now to start off the season.
Yeah, I think we talked about this quarterback battle a lot, and we all pretty much thought that Jameis was going to end up winning it over Taysom Hill. But that said, it was definitely more of a competition than I expected. And whether that's because of Sean Payton liking Taysom Hill or whatever his fascination is with him. I don't really understand it. But once Jameis came out in that second preseason game and started out 9 out of 10, threw 2 touchdowns, and then Taysom Hill came in and the offense just went to a stop. I mean, he was getting sacked, missing passes. It was obvious who the starter was going to be.
Yeah, especially when Taysom threw that, I guess it was a pass over the middle that went 6 yards. Then it wasn't within 30 feet of anybody.
Yes, I'm serious, Noah. Yes, no, I'm very serious. What's your question?
And he said that Nate is a bot. You're a bot, Nate. I don't know. If
Noah,
you know
is that Noah Nieder douche? Is that how you say his last name? Noah Nieder douche?
I think it might be. He said, "What's FSU's record the past 3 seasons?" Anyways, go back to Jameis talk. I didn't mean to even bring that up. It's trolling, but go back, Austin.
I was done with my point, but
okay.
It was good to see him and Marcus Callaway had a really good connection.
Didn't that seem familiar to Kelvin Benjamin with him wearing one and he got the
really
dreads?
Familiar. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking watching the highlights. But I think Callaway had six catches? He was killing it. Just James kept feeding him, especially that one-handed touchdown for the second one.
Yep, exactly.
So I think he's in the best shape he's been in probably maybe in his entire career. Definitely since 2013.
By far. I think he's even better.
I think he looked great in the preseason. I think they had to give Taysom Hill a shot because they're paying him, $13 million a year. So that you got to explain that contract, which was questionable when they signed that. Taysom Hill is what he is. He's an offensive weapon that you can use in a multitude of ways. He's just not a quarterback, and I think a motivated Jameis in a system offensively that. With Sean Payton, who's had a ton of success, I'm interested to see. I still don't think that Jameis, he had brain farts and, played like a young quarterback at times, but I don't think he was the main issue in Tampa. I'll sit and argue that for days because of just the investments Tampa's made since he's left. But, that it's a little bit of a team in transition. Michael Thomas is out for 6 weeks. They're going to be really heavily dependent on Alvin Kamara. I'm interested to see the tight ends. Jameis likes the tight end. Going to be an interesting season for him. I really wish him a lot of success. I would love to see him just do very well and shut up some of his critics.
I like his windup more too. In college, it's really elongated.
Yep.
Got a really low stride.
It's compact now. It gets the ball out quicker.
And last year, the few times he threw, I thought it was too compact.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like it was too tight, but it looks so much more free. It looks so much more free this year. I think he's gonna have a really good season.
Yeah,
comeback player of the year.
Derwin.
Does this count? I would say Derwin's.
Oh, I don't know if it counts or not.
I don't know.
It might not count.
I don't know how it counts.
As long as Derwin stays healthy, he's going to be in the running for All Pro. I really just think that.
Between McCaffrey and Derwin, there's a long list of guys that'll be in the pass back player of the year or comeback player of the year.
I'm excited too because like you had mentioned, Nate. A lot of people. I love the Bucs fan because I tweet. I voice my opinion on Jameis. I'm always going to be supportive, and the fact that people don't realize what Notre Dame switched and made a huge haul on actually taking shit seriously, and having an offensive line, putting targets around Jameis, along with just taking it. The team more seriously, once Tom Brady came, the difference there with Jameis, I mean, people just are ridiculous, man. I can't stand them sometimes. It's all, but the Bucs, the Bucs fans that are Jameis haters, I hope they're doing good. I cannot wait. I'm going to try to buy tickets to, I don't know if I want to go to New Orleans or if I want to go to Tampa, but I got to figure out a way to be in the stands for whenever Jameis lights it up against Tom Brady and the Bucs. I can't wait. I'm sure we got a lot of Bucs fans on here, so maybe they're not liking it, but bittersweet. Is what it is. But congrats to Jameis Winston. He deserved it. He was the best player in camp. And I'm really excited. He faces off against Green Bay week 1 at 4:25 in Jacksonville. So primetime matchup there. Should be fun. Aaron Rodgers versus Jameis. I think a lot of points in that game. And he's got, Alvin Kamara. We'll see if Michael Thomas, what's going on there. But it seems like Callaway is a nice little addition there, that wide receiver. Let's jump into some more quick hitters here. Depth chart. The depth chart got released by Florida State officially. What do y'all think about it so far? So, of course, you got Jordan Travis and Mackenzie Milton listed as or. I don't think that's a shock to anyone on this show. No, but going to some other things across the depth chart, you're looking at your 2 starting corners, which I was looking for, and you've got Brownlee. Not a crazy surprise there. And then I was wondering, who could it be? Travis Jay, as we saw, was participating really early on in the fall camp. Nate, you'd heard from a source that he had been, there's potential that he was going to be practicing there to start off fall camp. And it seems like he's done very well for himself. He played it in Madison County. He's a physical guy at the line and played really well in high school. And then you see Akeem Dent starting at free safety. So guys are going back to their original spots, and, just kind of give me y'all's thoughts on that. The linebacker room is something to talk about too, because, it's kind of, we weren't expecting some of these names to be starters, week 1.
Yeah, I think probably, just to start off the linebacker room, maybe a bit of a surprise to see DJ Lundy and Kalen Deloach get named starters instead of Steven Dix Jr. Obviously, they'll be out there alongside Amari Gaynor. And I think this is a game, talking about the Notre Dame game, this is one where I think you're going to see Florida State have to play a lot of 4-3 defense just because of how strong Notre Dame's rushing attack is. So these guys are going to get a lot of burn on Sunday night. And at the same time, I do think Florida State, they're going to switch into the 4-2-5, the nickel, depending on situations. But just, with Kyron Williams and Tyree back there, and the fact, Notre Dame, I think they had over 300 rushing yards against FSU a season ago. You're really going to need these linebackers to step up.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing that stood out to me first is wide receiver. We had heard that Darian Williamson was having a solid camp, and he comes in as second team on the first depth chart. So it's nice to see him, 2 years off of an ACL injury, start to put it together. A young kid that can stretch the field. Would love to see Jordan Young put it together, but it's just not happening there. I think offensive line. You kind of knew who the five were going to be. You have some. It's hard to say quality, but you have experienced depth with Babian Johnson and Dante Lucas. Brady Scott. A guy that can play. All across the line. So you have a good, 8 to 10 guys on the offensive line that can be in the rotation. And then for me, the biggest surprise was again linebacker. Seeing Cortez Andrews pop up on the second team, and also Green McKnight, who again, like I said last week, I love the move of him moving to linebacker. I think he's a guy that can help them in space and coverage. So I like to see that. I think Lundy gets to start this week because, like you said, Dustin, it's the who they play. Notre Dame's gonna, I think, want to like Brian was talking about, control the clock. Really try to pound the ball. And I think that's where Lundy, really specializes. So I'm not surprised that he's starting. Travis Jay, you put him in a position where you just let the kid play. He's going to make plays for you. We heard Brownlee was competing. I thought maybe Dotson would beat him out for it, but I think you're going to see a lot of rotation back there, in that back four. So, and I feel really good about FSU starting, front four. There's a lot of experience there. I've said it numerous times. You don't have the freaks on there like you've had before, but you have production, and that's what FSU needs, and that needs to carry over. So, I like the 2 deep on the front four. Linebacker is, in my opinion, the weakest position on the team. They got to just figure that out, and we'll see what happens. Like you said, Dustin, Notre Dame just gutted them last year. There's some of that was, just poor defensive line play, wrong run fits, and all that kind of stuff. Florida State's just got to play smarter also this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and for the linebackers, you've got to get Emmett Rice back healthy. And just to go back to the defensive line real quick, I really do think that matchup at left tackle with Blake Fisher and Jermaine Johnson, it's
going to be a problem, man.
It's the biggest matchup for Florida State's defense in this entire game. You've got a true freshman left tackle. Yeah, he was very good, top 70 overall prospect. He's got a great frame, and like Brian said, he's came in and took over that job. But at the same time, it's a true freshman going against a college player that spent 5 years in a college strength and conditioning program. And it's going to be his first game in a crazy atmosphere in Doak Campbell Stadium. So there's going to be some issues there. And Florida State, whether it's Jermaine Johnson going right at him or mixing it up with blitzes or whatnot, they're going to need to figure out a way to take advantage of it.
And not even Johnson, but Cushney as well, who's super athletic, got a lot of juice to him. They're going to be going at him all night. I don't think that's going to be any surprise.
So, great point, Austin, I was about to make. So you're going to bring the power and the speed combination, at him all night long. So, he's going to be on his heels a little bit. So I'm eager to see how that turns out. But Johnson's a dog, man, and he wants to embarrass you. I think it's something we haven't talked about. I think Logan, you put a little tidbit in the Discord at one point where players were just calling him an a-hole.
Yeah,
just it's how he plays, and I'm fine with that. So I don't care who you are. A freshman is going to have problems. So we'll talk about that when it's time for prediction time. So, but we'll see how that goes.
A couple things to me when I was looking at the depth chart, we've talked about how young this team is, but then you look at the depth chart, you just go, wow.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially on the defense, especially in the secondary, you got Brownlee's a freshman, obviously a redshirt freshman, but still a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
You got Shaheem Brown, freshman, Sidney Williams, freshman, Travis Day's redshirt freshman. It's technically his third year, whatever. Kevin Knowles, freshman. There's so many freshmen on this two deep that, you get an injury here or there, and you're like, man, what's this team going to look like?
But they're definitely one of the youngest teams in the country again. Last year they were the youngest, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're one of the 3 or 4 youngest teams in the country.
Yeah, and then this is a little bit more joking, but the fiercest battle in training camp, lawn snapper.
Mm-hmm.
Still says or no starter. Can't even announce a starter for lawn snapper. Can't ruin that surprise.
Riveting. When we go into the Discord and we figure out who's starting during the pregame warmups, it's going to be better than the quarterback, I think.
Hey, but we know what Norvell, how much he puts into special teams and how important it is. So that battle is still continuing.
Yeah, at least Fitzgerald got named starter for kicker.
Yep.
You felt comfortable enough to name a starter at kicker, but not at long snapper.
But we know historically that the long snapper also has had a lot of success off the field at FSU. So you got to make sure it's someone that represents the rich tradition that Florida State has at long snapper.
Yeah. I was going to note too, real quick, you were talking about true freshmen, Joshua Farmer is being put in there. And I think he's going to be in the rotation, guys. I mean, what happened to True Thompson? True Thompson is he? Where's True Thompson? Where's he at? I don't know. But Joshua Farmer, I think, is kind of slid in, and he's going to be a guy that I think Adam Fuller noted on a few of those youngins like Knowles and Farmer that get in there and get some early rotation. And I think it's going to be fun to watch him because he's a guy that showed up. Well, even before showing up, he was already working out a ton. We got to see his coaches post videos on Twitter. He was already working on himself a ton, doing a lot of training. Then once arriving, I mean, it just, exploded. And so I think, look out for Joshua Farmer, number 44. We know who recently, wore number 44 with DeMarcus Walker. We'll see if he's able to live up to that kind of number that he left with. So I'm interested to see him. Keep an eye on Farmer. It's a kind of a late sleeper guy this week on game week to watch out for. Let's see, jumping into the rest of some quick hitters before we jump into some game previews.
These haven't been very quick, Logan.
Well, because we like to talk and it's game week. So, extra content. This is
just call them hitters.
I think they do need to be hitters, honestly. Anyways, NFL Knowles cut. It is cutting season, gentlemen, and the NFL for some FSU former Knowles. Some to note here: Devonte Freeman cut, Jack West Patrick, which we were a little shocked there, Nate. We talked about it in our group chat. Derek Kelly, Bobby Hart, Ryan Izzo, Terrence Smith, and Trey Marshall. All of those guys have been let go. Some guys to note that have made the 53-man roster, one of them being Gabe Neighbors. There was a lot of speculation, at least on the Chargers side of things, and what I did a little research into. They were kind of wondering if he was going to make it or not. He missed a little bit of practice in the last week or so. He's going to be making the team, which is a great.
Trey Marshall got picked up by the Chargers.
I was about to say he's definitely going to go to an LA team. I mean, that's just
as
close as him and
added up.
Yeah, he signed with the Chargers.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of like the cuts there. Devonte Freeman sadly didn't make it with the Saints, and you didn't have that reunion officially with Jameis Winston.
Well, he didn't have a good preseason. I mean, honestly, like his stats weren't very good, and he's not really a guy that plays special teams. So to have him as your third down or your third running back, he doesn't bring a lot of value. Unfortunately, he's not producing.
I hate to say it, Freeman's career is over. You know, the average, you know, I think it's 1.5 years is the average career for a running back. They don't even make your second contract. So he got to make it to a second contract, made money. But, you know, we're talking, 7-8 years in, I his career is over. And he had a really solid, 3 to 4 years in Atlanta. So, I think he's had a solid career. Get out while you can, while you're healthy, and, move on to other ventures. For me, the biggest surprise was Jaquise Patrick. I thought he was going to make it. He had a lot of playing time in the preseason. I watched the Bengals a couple times, especially when I was out early with COVID and then sitting at home watching TV. He played a lot. Even in the last game, he played a ton, and he ran really well. Kind of surprised, with the lack of depth that the Bengals have behind Joe Mixon, but I'm sure he'll get picked up maybe by the practice squad. So we'll see what happens with that.
Best of luck to all of them, most certainly.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way it goes, business, man. It stinks, but it goes. Yep. It's kind of, you're getting that 2013, that 2010, that kind of like that. It's crazy to see, but that time is passing by, guys, and there's only a few left standing, and we'll see. But the big news, obviously, it's tough.
I don't know if it's correct, but I was looking at the Seminoles.com page, like to see the FSU football players currently in the NFL, and if the numbers are right, after these cuts in Florida State, they now have less than 30 active players in the NFL. Which, when is the last time that happened?
2006 and 7. That probably the end of the Bowden era.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you look at a guy like Bobby Hart. He entered FSU young, 17 years old, graduated or left Florida State at 21. Has been in the NFL for 7-8 years, and he's still. I won't be surprised if he gets picked up somewhere. Still has.
He started over 60 games, which is something that kind of surprised me.
Yeah. I mean, he's played a ton in the NFL. I won't be surprised if he gets picked up, but like you said, that's just indicative of the end of the Jimbo Fisher era into the the first years of Taggart. So it just tells you the sheer recruiting misses that changed the trajectory of the program.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and jump into our little quick game preview here and give our score predictions and key players for the game. Before we do that, let's give some love to our sponsors also for tonight's show, which is Manscaped. Definitely appreciate them showing some love to us. I recently used it last week. I will have to say, by far, the enhancements they made on the razor, phenomenal. I got to say that the lighting, I did not know this. I didn't think it'd be do much. I know Nate talked about it last week, but the lighting on the razor, clutch, works out perfect. No nicks, no nothing. It works smoothly. I'm feeling great. I'm ready for the game this upcoming weekend. But practically talk a little bit more about it. The Lawnmower 4.0 allows you to customize your trim all over, additional guard lengths with sizes 1 to 4. It also has wireless charging. Did you ever know that you have something that can cut your ball hair that also charges wireless? I mean, come on now, 21st century.
I will say, Dustin, it'd probably be good for all your back hair too. Just to help trim that off.
When have you seen my bare back, Nate? That's kind of concerning.
I'm just guessing, just by.
Yeah. We can confirm this weekend. We can confirm that at the tailgate.
Hey, we can go ahead and kind of do an ad for them. We can use Dustin's back as proof of how good of a razor it is.
Yeah, no, exactly. It might work out so well. But anyways, if you guys want some money off, I promise you the package, I don't have it on me, but because I just used it, but literally use Knowles20. That's the code for 20% off. We've had a few people in the Discord already use it. They said it's phenomenal and it's free shipping. So use code Knowles20 for 20% off and free shipping. The packaging is awesome. The product is really, really good. And I definitely back up the lighting part of it because that came in clutch like 2 nights ago, and it did me really well before my
Did not
shower.
turn your lights on? Like I don't get it.
I have my lights on, but you don't understand like the extra lighting there that it gets in the like the crevices there. I don't want to go in details here, but yeah, I don't want to go too deep in it. But anyways, manscaped.com, use our code Knowles20 for 20% off and free shipping. Manscaped.
I'm pretty excited for for the boneless wings from Hobbit, dude.
Bone in wings.
Boneless.
Bone in wings.
He's excited for Hobbit's chicken nuggets with flavor.
That is true. That's exactly what it will be this upcoming weekend. Nate, we will definitely be hopping over to Hobbit. We'll talk about them before we end off the show. Gentlemen, let's go ahead and get to it right now. We'll spend a few minutes, about 10, 15 minutes here. Gentlemen, first thoughts on into the game. We just had Brian on, gave us a great rundown on Notre Dame, but first thoughts, packed crowd, Florida State versus Notre Dame, number 9 in the country, 7:30 ABC primetime. We're here, baby. We made it.
Go ahead, Austin and Dustin. I already kind of gave my quick thoughts with Notre Dame, so I'll let you guys go first.
I've seen a couple people mention in the comments like, "Oh, Notre Dame only scored 7 points in the second half last year. They didn't need to score anything. Like Florida State was down and out at halftime." They do have a new defensive coordinator who was really good at Cincinnati. You look at what they did last season. I think only one game an opposing team scored more than 25 points. Obviously, the American Conference is different from the ACC, but he's a good defensive coordinator. How they switch to a new scheme, that's something we don't know yet. We'll see. Obviously, Kyle Hamilton's fantastic, and we've already read about him enough with Brian. Just fantastic defensive player. But then on offense, I'm kind of with you, Nate. I think Brian was overspeaking their receiver talent. You look at a season ago, they're kind of bad. Obviously, yeah, it's all great if they stay healthy, blah, blah, blah. But until they stay healthy, it's not that talented of a group, at least so far. And I don't think Jack Cohn's that good of a quarterback to make them better receivers. So we'll see with that. Obviously, their running backs are fantastic. They killed us last season. What was it? Kyron Williams had 185 yards. Chris Tyree had 103 yards.
Yeah.
Even Ian Book had 58 yards. Like, come on. They killed us on the ground. Obviously, that's going to change with Florida State's defensive front this year. That's going to change. There's no way they go for almost 300 rushing yards this year. Hopefully, at least.
Yeah,
Hopefully
not. No.
And then we've talked about true freshman left tackle for Notre Dame. They've got some experience there along the rest of the offensive line. We'll see how that works out, but I don't think it's as wide of a gap as people think it is, especially from Notre Dame's side. That Notre Dame's always going to be a little bit cocky, but I don't think it's as wide of a gap as it is, especially with the Bobby Bowden news, all the tributes they're doing. Florida State's going to want to get up and play in front of 80,000 fans for the first time. And when was the last time we had 80,000 fans?
It's been a minute.
I can't even think of a game right now off the top of my head.
And when is the last time all of us
Virginia
have been
Tech,
in this?
maybe?
Yeah, that's got to be Virginia Tech.
And when is the last time all of us have been in the stadium together during a game? I mean, like usually someone's back home.
It could have been the spring game if Nate came up, but
Yeah, that is true. But anyways, like a real actual game, this is the real deal, baby. We're all gonna be tailgating. Austin's gonna be drinking his milk. We're all gonna be drinking beers, like
water.
It's gonna be real nice. But yeah, I'm
We're
personally
shaving backs. It's gonna be great, man.
shaving Dustin back.
Shaving backs, eating Hobbit.
What a day, man. Who needs a game?
Yeah, no. We'll just go to tailgates and
we
just
get a
shave
Whataburger
Dustin's
after, man.
I mean, let's be real. If Virginia Tech ended after the tailgate, everyone would have had a great day. That would have been fantastic. Everyone had a great day tailgating, catching up with people.
It is. It's a big reunion.
And then you go to the game and like, man.
It's a big reunion for a lot of FSU fans that didn't get to go to games last year, and it didn't feel real. It didn't feel like a real football game whenever I was there, sitting there, and it just not enough fans there. This will be fun. We'll be back like in action, and like you said, Nate, the tributes and everything, and like you said, Austin too, the tributes to Bobby Bowden this upcoming season. Definitely this game alone, it's going to be an emotional roller coaster for a lot of fans involved. And so, I mean, it's going to be a fun day. The tailgating starts at noon, guys. I don't know how some of these college kids are going to be able to do it. I mean, I'm going to be getting there maybe 2-3 o'clock ish. I know we've had a few people in here in the comments say they need NG bracelets. If you see one of us, I think I'm going to try to give a few of them to you guys so you'll have them in your pocket in case someone runs by and says what's up. But it's going to be fun. It's going to be a phenomenal experience, I hope. And I hope it translates into the game too. Overall, it
All right,
should be a fun
Dustin,
night.
go ahead. Preview. What are your thoughts?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just hyped up, Nate.
Yeah, I was just going to say, coming into this game, I'm pretty comfortable with Florida State's offense. I mean, I don't think they're going to go out there and score 40 points. But, I think with the experience that they gained last year, carrying that over, bringing back a lot of the top playmakers, along with adding guys like Andrew Parchment and Malik McLean to the wide receiving core, I'm comfortable with Florida State's game plan. I think it's going to be important to have success in early downs because you don't want to get into third and long situations like that. It's just the defense for me is really, and FSU's defense against Notre Dame's offense is kind of where I see the biggest mismatch in this whole matchup, and that's really the tight end, Michael Mayer, going up against FSU's linebackers, which is something that we've already talked about. And then the rushing attack, man. I mean, those running backs, they're absolutely lethal. And if FSU gives them even an inch of space, there's a chance they'll go out and make a big play like we saw a plethora of times last year. So the defensive line is going to have to step up, and the linebackers. I mean, you need a heck of a game from Amari Gaynor and those young guys like Kalen DeLoach, DJ Lundy. Like we mentioned earlier, you're going to need them to step right into the fire and perform. And even Steven Dix Jr. behind him, Cortez Andrews is going to get some burn. And, not for this game, but it's going to be huge for FSU's linebackers later in the season to get Emmett Rice back and have him be able to contribute.
Let's name some key
Hold
players.
on, my turn, man. Shoot,
Oh,
man.
you go ahead. You go ahead. You made everybody get theirs
I got a couple
out.
things to say. So I know that Brian gave a little pushback on my whole thing about looking at last year, but
Well, I bet he's tuned in. I'm sure he's tuned in.
yeah,
Right now.
I get it. You have guys who have started here and there. There's a difference from starting week over week to being a substitutional player. There's a major difference to doing it every single week. So I'm not really. I'm the opposite of him. Yeah, you have some game experience, but there's a reason why you're a backup. Now you're putting as a fifth year guy. Now you're starting. There's a reason why. Yeah, granted that they've done a great job at that position, but I really truly think that you start 4 new offensive linemen, you're gonna have continuity issues. You have a new quarterback, you're gonna have issues. You have wide receivers like Austin. I agree. I'm not big on. Yeah, they were. That's what I was trying to get at when I asked them about the wide receivers. Yeah, they were highly recruited, but they haven't produced. Availability is just as big as anything. And we've seen that from the Florida State side. Guys just constantly banged up and not available. So we've experienced that from our side as Florida State fans. And I'm looking at it that way too. That you're replacing a lot. And I have a hard time just thinking that I think Notre Dame's preseason ranking is based off what they've done the past few years. This is a test for them, despite what Florida State's been the past couple of years. I do agree with him that Florida State is, trending up and all that kind of stuff. But, this is a test. And I don't think Notre Dame is as well set as he thinks. But on the flip side, I agree with Dustin that this game comes down to a few things for me is, getting after the passer. But the linebackers, man, they got to step up and play. They got to cover the tight end. They got to have the right run fit. They got to tackle. They got to just play better, play smart football. So that's going to be what happens. What dictates this game is can Florida State not allow Notre Dame to play ball control, eat the clock, and just put it down your throat. So we'll.
And get 3 or more sacks.
Yeah, jumping in real quick before we score predictions.
5,
one key player on offense and defense. Everybody make their pick one, and it can be the same as someone else. But
for
one key player
FSU,
on offense. Yep, for FSU on offense and defense.
I'll go Jordan Travis, and I say that because
Okay.
You know, it's looking more and more like he's going to be the starter. You know, can he consistently push the ball down the field? Like Brian said, you know, hit those gimmies. Can he be a consistent passer to open up those running lanes? Because, you know, he is lethal as a runner, and you got to keep that defense on their heels. So I will go Jordan Travis, and on defense, I'm going to go Amari Gaynor. I think it's time for him to put it all together. You know, he has the athleticism, he has the experience. You know, he's a leader of that group, a leader of that defense. He needs to have a big game for Florida State to come out victorious.
Real quick before I get to mine, we haven't talked about Jack Cohn missing half of last season with a foot injury. Yeah, he had to miss the second half of the season with a foot surgery.
He hasn't played in a year and a half.
Yeah, so like, how does he look? Coming like all of these quarterbacks have injury questions. How does that look? Anyways, I just want to mention that real quick.
Yeah.
For me on offense, it's going to be one of the receivers. You know, whether it's Parchment or McLean or Ontario Wilson, one of those receivers has to step up. This passing attack has to be more vertical. It has to be more explosive.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever it is, one of them has to step up. I'm not going to name a specific name. Just one of them has to step up. Then on defense, kind of vague as well. I'm sorry. Whoever's guarding Mayer, their tight end, whether they want to put Brownlee on him from the slot, whether it's one of the linebackers like DJ Lundy, whether it's Green McKnight as a second option. One of those guys is going to have to guard him and really, really keep him contained. Obviously, you're not going to stop a guy that talented, especially a guy that broke freshman records at Notre Dame. That's impressive. But someone's got to contain him. Someone's got to keep him from, you know, beating us over the middle like every tight end has ever done. But that's what I'm watching out for as far as players.
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of agree with you, Austin. On offense, you're going to need a guy like Andrew Parchment to go out there and create some big plays downfield. I mean, to win this game, Florida State's going to have to take some shots, and they're going to have to connect on them. And with Parchment coming in now as a grad transfer, he's your best big play threat in the season opener. And, you know, it seems like the last couple of weeks he's really started to come on for Florida State and become more consistent each and every day. I just want to see if that carries over into Sunday night. And defense, I mean, I've already talked about it. I think the biggest matchup of the entire game is Jermaine Johnson against Blake Fisher. You know, however they're going to do it, Jermaine Johnson has got to go out there, have the game of his life, dominate this kid, make an 18-year-old kid look like an 18-year-old kid. You need to look like a 23-year-old grown-ass man who's been working out in college for the past 5 years. Go out there, put him on his ass, and go sack Cone, basically.
Damn, D-Lou, you get me fired up. Get me fired up over here, baby. Damn, put D-Lou in the locker room, Norvell. What are we doing? God dang. Here we go. Okay. For me, I'm going to go with, hey, Nate, it's nice to be on the same side, baby. The same side of the fence with Jordan Travis, isn't it? It's so nice to be here together and arm in arm. I can't wait for Sunday night. But anyways, Jordan Travis, I think Notre Dame, like Brian said, they're going to be prepared for him. They saw what he did last year. They saw what he did throughout the season last year. They have film on him. They're going to want to contain him. So they're going to know what to do there with him. The thing with him, though, he's got to be able to throw the ball. Got to get the ball down the field. And from what we've heard, we hear all the optimism that he is getting. He's improved as a passer. There's not a lot of takeaways. He's staying more comfortable in the pocket. That's going to be the biggest thing, I think, on offense for you know, as a player to pick. Defensive, go ahead.
They've also gotten better play at wide receiver in general.
Yeah, I think so.
So far
I think
in
so
camp,
too.
so.
And I think so too. Also, and I think Malik McLean, you're going to see number 11 out there, maybe second or third snap. Anyways, going on to defensively, this one's kind of toss up between linebacker play and defensive end. I do think covering tight end, you know, that's going to be a huge problem that Florida State's going to have to handle. I'm still going with Jermaine Johnson. It's got to be a big game. This is why he came to Florida State. He wants this playing time. He wants to be on national television like this. He wants to play, and he has the advantage. He has the experience over everyone almost in this room at Florida State and who he'll be competing against. You can't lose to a teenager like this on a Sunday night primetime matchup. That's just not going to be the case coming from SEC. No bueno. You've got to get after him and cause havoc after the quarterback and, you know, get him off his rhythm. But that Florida State has got to be ready. And if I couldn't name a player for a game, my coach to look at is Adam Fuller. What we saw last year was bad. That's just to say it nice and PG here. We've got to see something on Sunday night where first quarter, Colin's thinking about, why did he do this? Why did he come and play for Notre Dame?
I'm sorry.
I want his neck. I need to see the neck obliterated.
Whoa.
Well, no, not obliterated neck, but Well, great. Now Nate's going to say something where it's going to be even worse from what I said.
Now, I'm sorry, but if the defense looks like last year, Fuller should just walk off the field, drop his headset, and give I'm so sorry, I'm out of here.
We can't even give him Hobbit before he leaves. He's just
if the
leave.
defense looks like last year, he's not making it through 4 games. Like, there's no way.
No. So
let's. Are y'all ready? Are we all ready
Yep.
for a little bit of score predictions to finish off the show?
let's
here?
do it, man. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Florida State, first number 9, Notre Dame. Here we go. Primetime
I'll go
matchup,
first.
ABC. Nate wants to go first. He's got his booklet that he's written down all day.
Mm-hmm.
It's been
So-
going
What do
on
you got?
for months.
So
Months, it could be months.
Let's not forget that Coach Norvell is very familiar with this defensive coordinator. I think he's faced him twice, and he's dominated him. So there's some familiarity with what this guy's going to want to do on defense. So this isn't a defensive coordinator that the Florida State coaches aren't familiar with. So that's something that I think no one's really discussed. I look at this team. I really think this is a very winnable game. I think it's a great spot on the schedule where Notre Dame will get better as the season goes on. They've recruited well. As much as I don't like Brian Kelly, he does develop, and he is a good coach. But they lost a lot off a team that when you look at, I mentioned the advanced stats earlier, but they were only 26 in efficiency, not even top 25% of the country, 34th in explosiveness, which was a little surprising with the way they like to control the ball. But they 77% in the red zone. So as dominant as the offensive line was, a 27-year starter in Ian Book, new quarterback, new O-line, new wide receivers.
How does this happen every time?
Wow.
Like-
Wow. It can't, it just doesn't get any more the storyline. This is exactly how it goes. We lost Nate. If we're listening on the podcast, people, we just lost Nate. This is how it usually happens. It's always when he's talking and like something big is about to happen. So we should have known this was going to go down. Wow. And Nate's back. Nate's back. We're good.
No, my phone's about to die, so I got to spit this out. Sorry.
Spit it.
So I think this is a winnable game. Like I was saying, the advanced metrics, they aren't great, and I would predict FSU to win if I had a little bit more confidence. I got to see it from FSU. I think this is an ultra competitive game. I think that it's going to be tight. I think it's going to go into the fourth quarter. I think that Notre Dame wins at 27-24.
27-24. Fourth quarter game winner from Notre Dame.
Fourth quarter game. I think that they, I think Kyrie Williams busts off a long run, gets them in field goal position, and that's going to be the difference.
Okay. All right. So Notre Dame.
But it would not surprise me, honestly, to see FSU win this game. It would not surprise me. It would not. It's a great spot on the schedule for FSU to play Notre Dame.
I agree with you, Nate. I think Florida State is going to come in fired up in this game. And I think the first half particularly is going to be extremely competitive between these two teams because Notre Dame, like you mentioned, they've got a lot to figure out on offense and defense. It's going to take some time for them to gel. I don't know if they'll come out of the gate in this game, firing on all cylinders. It's going to take some time as the game goes on. Same thing for Florida State. So I think the first half is going to be a really close battle. And then in the fourth quarter, Notre Dame is just going to end up making a couple more plays than Florida State. I don't think, we can really argue that they're the more experienced team. They're more talented at this point, and they have more depth. And I just think that's going to be the factor in the end. And I'll go with Kyron Williams. I mean, that dude is a terrific player. I think he'll have a heck of a game on Sunday night. I think Notre Dame's going to win in a close one, 34-27.
Whoa. Okay, now that's all right. Yeah, I won't say anything. Okay.
Couple of betting things before I get into my pick.
Betting. Okay.
Notre Dame opened as 11-point favorites. It's now down to 7.5 since it's opened. Over under is about 56, depending on the site. Look at 55.5, 56.5, whatever. I agree. I think it's gonna be closer than especially Brian thought. Brian thought it's gonna take a lot for this to be close. I think it's gonna be a pretty competitive game. Florida State may not have been great last year, but very rarely did they quit. Norvell teams don't seem to quit, which is something I think is important. I think Johnson's going to get after the quarterback, get a couple sacks, really put some pressure on Jack Cohn. How Florida State stops the run, we'll see. I also think it's going to come down to the end, but I also have Florida State losing a tight one, 30-24.
30-24. So we're all kind of in the tight range window here of the score. I think this game is going to be fun. I think it's going to be competitive. I think, that the crowd's going to help a lot in Florida State's case here, hopefully defensively too. I do think Florida State's going to get a few sacks in this game. I really do, and it's all going to depend on the blitz there. I think it all depends, too, on Florida State on takeaways. Florida State has put themselves a few times like last year in the point of having takeaways and getting those interceptions and getting those fumble recoveries, but God almighty, you can't pick up the damn ball. Hopefully they spent maybe a whole week on doing that during their spring and also did it in the fall camp. If they do that, that helps this team a whole ton. And the end-all, be-all, though, this all relies on Jordan Travis and Florida State's pass rush, like I said earlier. I feel confident that there's going to be progression there, but this is a number 9 team in the country coming in. I think there's a lot of cool storylines going into this, but I just don't see Florida State starting the season off with the win here. Sadly, this will be the 5th season in a row that they don't start off the season with a win. I've got Florida State losing this game, a good one going into the fourth quarter where we're excited about at least. It's going to be Notre Dame 34, FSU 21, and Notre Dame just kind of pulls away there at the end. I hope we're all wrong here. If we are all wrong, then the recap show will be phenomenal, and we'll have 500 people on the line. Absolutely loving it.
Like Nate said, it would have shocked me if Florida State won. It wouldn't blow me away. There's definitely momentum. There's the hype. There's the whole Bobby Bowden stuff. Florida State's not going to want to lose with Bobby watching over top. You go out and win against Notre Dame. College Town is going to be jumping until Tuesday. Mm-hmm. It's going to be an incredible atmosphere. Hopefully we're all wrong. I really hope we're all wrong and we can come on here either Sunday night or Monday morning and just
Me too.
Have the best time. But
yeah, no. If it's Sunday,
until Florida State proves us wrong.
Even though I predicted FSU to lose a tight game, if they win, I'm talking smack everywhere.
If Florida State wins, I may not come back to Charlotte.
At least come back onto the show. Austin, you can come here and we can both sit down here in the chairs and we talk a really fun game. I don't know if I'll be able to actually talk with my mouth. Like someone's gonna have to be a puppet for me because I guarantee you I'll be going to College Town and God knows what we'll be drinking. But I'm excited for this game. I hope everybody safe travels here. I know there's a lot of people coming in town for this. We will be having a recap. Nate, you'll be doing a recap on Mark Rogers' show on his main channel the night right afterwards, actually.
Now we're doing this one Monday because it's going to be super late into the game.
I was about to say. Okay, so you'll be doing a recap. So we'll actually have a recap before that Mark Rogers one, at least just for this week. We'll be doing live coverage throughout the game. We've got all kinds of things happening across social media. If you guys aren't in the Discord yet, let me put it up here. I know there's a lot of people on YouTube right now. Patreon.com/NoleGameDay. That's where you want to be right now. There's been 15,000 messages sent in the last 7 days. I've never seen anything like that before. It's the most active community. Join today, only $2.99 a month. Dustin, Austin, and Nate, along with other of our staff members, are giving nuggets, inside scoop. I'll actually be in the stands giving you live coverage from my voice inside the Discord, telling you who's taking starting warm-ups. everything, what the vibe is looking like, everything. It's going to be absolutely crazy. I've got an extra battery pack I'm bringing with me. The coverage this year is nuts. I'm just too hyped. I'm just talking nonstop. But shout out to the Hobbit, our friends over there. Go there this weekend. Hobbit American Grill, the best wings you're going to find. The garnet and gold wing sauce, absolutely amazing, delicious. So make sure you guys go check out Hobbit. They're amazing. Great people there that work too. So go support a local business here in town while you're here. Anything more, gentlemen? We've made it. We're here.
Hey, I just say, hey, for all those listening and watching, if you pass by me on Sunday, see what's up, man. It's good to put faces, with names and everything. So, I'll be around when to meet some of y'all, and I'm excited to get up to Tallahassee. It's been a while for me. I shouldn't go to games in person, just because I don't do very well.
No show. I wonder why.
So but hey, I gotta go to this. I gotta go to this one. So we'll see.
Yeah, like Nate said, if you see any of us around Tallahassee, we'll be happy to say hello. Last when I was in there for the spring game, it was just so cool being at Four Rivers. So I was like, hey, you guys are on that podcast, right? Just come say what's up. Love to, like Nate said, love to put names to faces and faces to names. Logan will have wristbands, hopefully, to give to us.
Oh yeah.
And I got Austin set up to do recruit interviews, so
No.
It's gonna be great.
Still not going to happen, unfortunately. As much as Nate wants it to happen, it's just not going to happen.
Before
Dustin
the year's
laughed.
over, Austin, you're doing one.
I will bet whatever amount of money you want to do that I will not do a football recruiting interview by the time the year is over.
I will.
Whatever, just name the number.
We'll discuss that off the podcast.
Name the number.
There's been a few people on here asking
pair
where
of
to tailgate
J's.
that. We do not have a tailgate named yet. I don't think we will be, just because I feel like it would be bombarded. I think for the Miami game, it's just a early notice. I think for the Notre Dame game or Miami game, my bad. Miami game, there could be something set in the works there. But if you do see us, like Nate said, come say what's up to us for real. Come say hi. Dustin, last thoughts on that offseason, saying goodbye to the offseason. This is it.
We won't miss you.
It was
unless
fun.
Florida State doesn't start the season well, then we will want you to come back.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lot of fun.
We'll talk to you in 2 weeks off season. We'll make a verdict then.
I thought it was a fun offseason. Thank you to a ton. Like Austin said, hearing people come and tell us that they listen to our show in person like that, it's really cool and it means the world to us. So definitely, if you do see us, we'll be all around campus and tailgating. So come say hey to us. Don't be shy at all. I got a wristband for you. Everybody, safe travels. Enjoy the game. It's officially game week. Florida State versus number 9. Notre Dame comes into town. The Fighting Irish. Prime time, 7:30 p.m. Peace, and we'll talk to you later.